Hello and welcome, Marvel fans, and thank you as always for joining me for yet another breakdown review, today looking into the bittersweet season finale of WandaVision. Was it a worthy ending to the journey? Did they leave any questions unanswered? Did Mephisto pop up? Let's get into all of that, but before we do, I would just like to quickly ask if you would be so kind as to click subscribe and that notifications bell, because I would feel terrible if you missed out on any future content we got coming to this channel. So, the finale starts up literally right where the previous episode left off, out in the middle of the street with Tommy and Billy being held hostage by Agatha. Wanda Hadoukens some magic at her to free the boys, and next thing you know, she realizes Agatha is absorbing the magic being shot at her, and she discloses that taking power from the undeserving is kind of her thing. Ooh, burn. Then we get to find out what Agatha's goal is here. Simply put, she wants Wanda's powers as she feels the Scarlet Witch doesn't know what to do with them, and in return, she'll allow Wanda to keep Westview the picture-perfect corner of the world she has made it. And Wanda's reply is throwing a car at her. Nice. We get a funny little Easter egg here when she goes to check on the status of Agatha, as all that remains underneath the car is a pair of boots. Nice little nod to the Wizard of Oz. But before she can inspect the scene further, White Vision floats his way on down behind her. Seriously? They're not going to show how he got in there? I mean, I get it, he must have walked right through, but how? Is it maybe because his power is derived from Wanda's own magic, so perhaps that's what prevented him from being altered upon entering? I mean, why wouldn't you show it? Whatever. Wanda is visibly stunned at his arrival, questioning if it's really him, and he consolingly places his hand upon her cheek, and then his hand on her other cheek, and then he starts to give a tender, loving squeeze. Oh, whoa, no, he's straight up trying to pop her head like the Mountain did to Oberyn in Game of Thrones. He doesn't succeed though. Just in time, Colored-In Vision swoops in to save his beloved. Also, we can cross out the theory of White Vision being voiced by James Spader or being a recreation of Ultron. It's just a more intimidating version of good old Paul Bettany, which I'm not going to complain that much about, though seeing Ultron return would have been a unique and dangerous way to shake things up. I'm fine with how they put it together. Wanda apologizes for not admitting to all this earlier, but Colored Vision is like, "You're good, babe," and he stands with his wife to go fight alongside her. Vision and Vision fly off to go toe-to-toe, and Wanda flies off after Agatha. But instead of following them, the camera moves back to show Monica apparently trapped inside of a room with Pietro, who still has his Quicksilver powers, showing them off when he stops Monica from leaving. But he also does like this Bruce Lee 1-inch punch that sends Monica flying across the room, which just made me think, doesn't Monica also have powers now? Like, ones that just let her stand up to Wanda for a moment? I know she just got them, but how is he even posing a threat to her? No time for that now as we cut back to Vision versus himself in midair, and I gotta point out real quick that I feel the Vision against Vision scenes are the best action scenes presented in this episode. They're distinct and creative and do a nice job of showcasing the power they have and the way they would use it against one another, as opposed to simply seeing who can land the harder punch. Director Douchebag is seen to be tracking the Visions and also now has Jimmy held captive, and there's a small line thrown in that may prove to be more important than it would seem. Hayward asks another agent if White Vision is still under their control and gets an answer claiming they believe him to be, hinting at the fact that they basically just let a monster off the leash without having a guarantee they could properly restrain it. And also that White Vision may end up being able to ditch Sword to leave and do his own thing instead of living out his days as a brainwashed puppet. Jimmy warns Hayward that he won't get away with this, but Hayward's like, "Pfft, watch me," thinking he'll be a renowned hero for taking out Wanda and recovering the vibranium synthezoid, and then delivers quite possibly the cheesiest line of the show by telling Jimmy he could be a part of this victory too if he only had a little more vision. Yep, I see what you did there. I mean, it works, but come on. But Jimmy shakes up the situation by revealing to Hayward that his team from Quantico will be there within the hour. Back on over to the Witches of Westview, Agatha goes on to mention that there's an entire chapter dedicated to the Scarlet Witch and the Darkhold, confirming we were right in my episode 7 review about what that book with the orange glow was, and then materializes it to read an excerpt for us. The most intriguing revelation here is when Agatha reads aloud that the Scarlet Witch's power exceeds that of the Sorcerer Supreme, giving us some insight to the true extent of what she's capable of. And this is completely in line with the comics, as Wanda is known as an Omega level mutant as well as a Nexus being, both of which being titles only given to someone that can do some major shit. And with that being said, I'll take a moment to clarify, as in my review for episode 5, I made it clear that I was not in line with Monica's opinion on Wanda being the only one close to taking down Thanos in Infinity War, throwing in that I wasn't too sure she would even hold her own entirely with Thanos having all the Infinity Stones. And I still stand by that comment, but mostly because I don't feel like Wanda's powers were fully unlocked or were unleashed at that point, but I'm ecstatic that they're hinting at her evolution into the incredibly dynamic hero the comics have made her into over the years. Agatha goes on to highlight to Wanda how much of a wicked witch she's unintentionally become by breaking Dottie from the meat puppet spell, who we find out her real name is Sarah, and quickly shows her devastation from being held against her will in Westview. Then Agatha cuts the strings on everyone else in town, and they all turn to Wanda like a creepy moment out of Twilight Zone. Cut back to Pietro's room to him explaining they're cooped up in his man cave that he stays at when the missus is causing trouble. So, like, have him and Agatha been... not even gonna talk about it. And then Monica finds a bill and an acting headshot, both with the name Ralph Boner on them. No, I'm not kidding. And deduces that this isn't Agatha's house, it's his. And then she pins him down, could have done that earlier, and rips off a necklace that was apparently responsible for keeping Ralph under Agatha's control. And he quickly begs for his life to be spared. But this is all obviously just a facade, right? Wait, what the fuck? It's not? That's seriously it? That's who he is? Not Quicksilver from the X-Men universe, not Mephisto or some other villain in disguise, just some random schmuck that happened to be in Westview and happens to resemble Peter Maximoff from X-Men? Are you shitting me? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This was the biggest disappointment of the entire show for me. They had such a phenomenal opportunity right in their fingertips and decided to wipe their ass with it and end it all with a boner joke that just felt so out of place. My only hope and optimism here come from noting Marvel's past history with similar details, most prominently in Spider-Man Far From Home. In that film, we are led to believe that Mysterio is from a different Earth, revealing to us that the multiverse exists. But later on in the movie, you find out he's just a clever asshole that used to work for Tony Stark and made up the whole story to help accomplish his revenge. At the time, that was a real kick to the nuts for us Marvel fans. It felt like someone opening up a door for you, promising an exciting future filled with reinvented magic from your past, only to realize that the door simply opens up to an edge of a cliff with a deadly fall below. However, fast forward a bit, and then we got the announcement of Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness. So it's almost like Marvel from time to time likes to tease us with stuff just to see how we react to it and then decide if it's worth moving forward with or not. Which, if that is the truth, then how about you just don't? Okay? How about you just actually do the thing instead of making it look and sound like you're doing the thing, only to then disappointingly subvert our expectations? They had another comparable example with the Mandarin not really being the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, but now the real Mandarin is apparently set to be the villain in the upcoming Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So I'm going to stay hopeful and keep my fingers crossed that the casting of Evan Peters was meant for more than this, and that we will eventually get a more deserving payoff to what could have and should have been done here. Okay, so we get a little more Vision on Vision. Billy urgently tells his brother that they gotta go after sensing their mom is in trouble, and we're brought back to Wanda being confronted by a large portion of the cast from her sitcom, where they are begging to be let go from her grip on them. The stress and emotions get the better of her, and she unintentionally uses her magic to choke them all, but quickly releases them and promises to let them leave, proceeding to open the walls of the hex so they can run for their lives. As this happens, Director Douchebag and his team see and take their chance to enter Westview. But then Wanda is presented with a decision that we knew was inevitable from the moment we found out she was the cause of this fake reality. Colored In Vision falls from the sky battle taking place, not necessarily because White Vision overpowered him, more so because the hex is being taken down, and the hex is what's keeping him alive in the first place. Wanda sees him begin to break down and dissolve the same way he did when he attempted to leave the hex in episode 6, followed immediately by Billy and Tommy, who start to have the same effect, all leading to the realization that she's got to choose whether she keeps her family or stops this chaos she's created. She can't convince herself to sacrifice the one she loves, and the walls of the hex begin to close back up. But as it does, the Maximoff family are presented with a triple threat as White Vision and Director Douchebag join in on the party. There's a nice little twist on the Avengers theme as we get a shot of the family ready for action, and the two Visions go at it once again inside a library. White Vision states his programming directive is to destroy the Vision, but Colored In Vision brings up a decent point by stating he's not the true Vision, but a conditional Vision. This visibly piques White Vision's interest, and he asks what his colorful doppelganger is talking about. Back outside, Wanda tells the boys to take care of the military as she flies up to Agatha and disappears. Billy uses his powers to essentially freeze all the soldiers in place, while Tommy sprints around and takes all their weapons. Except for Hayward, of course, who walks out, takes aim, and shoots at the boys. What, you crazy son of a... You're gonna start killing kids now? Only for Monica to show up at the perfect time to step in front of them all to display another one of her powers as she stops the bullets. Not by bouncing off of her, we see them travel through her, and she appears to absorb their kinetic energy since they come out the back of her like they simply fell out of her pocket. One gets past her though, but it ends up being blocked by Billy showing off his own telekinetic powers that can stop bullets. Hayward dives into a vehicle to, I don't know, back up and drive into them, I guess, but is smashed into and stopped by Darcy, who's still in the truck she was driving in with Vision in episode 7. Cut to the library where the two Visions are having a brilliantly deep conversation about the story of the ship of Theseus and the metaphysics of identity, which questions if an object that has had all of its components replaced remains fundamentally the same object, and how it mirrors their situation. Both of them are neither the original/true Vision, and yet both are still by all means Vision. Colored-in Vision helps White Vision understand that his memories are not necessarily wiped from his programming, but hidden, and convinces him to let his memories be unveiled. We see a wave of images from all the previous Marvel films we've seen him appear in up to this point. Then White Vision's eyes become more humanized, and he confidently states that he is Vision before he flies off to who the hell knows where, because that's the last we see of him. Then, as Agatha stands atop a building, we see Wanda pull the same scary witch trick she pulled back in Age of Ultron, and Agatha flashes back to herself at the Salem witch trials we witnessed in the preceding episode. The dead witches all rise, but then surprisingly turn their attention to Wanda, acknowledging her not only as the Scarlet Witch, but also as the harbinger of chaos, which is something I'm going to get back to later. Agatha makes another attempt to have Wanda submit her powers to her, and she'll let Wanda keep Westview the fairy tale ending fantasy land she's turned it into. But Wanda tackles Agatha out of the nightmare, and they fly off to have what could have been so much better battle. It's literally just a couple minutes of Wanda throwing red magic orbs at Agatha in midair, missing about half of her shots. Though there is a reason as to why she was missing so many, which we'll get to, but is this really the creative extent they were willing to go to? There was no other use of her powers to try and obtain the upper hand here? I'll give credit where it's due, she gave the Jedi mind trick a shot, but I just feel as though there was such a great opportunity to showcase some of her other, more imposing abilities, or just something other than an airborne game of dodgeball. So, after Agatha has had her fill of Wanda's absorbed magic, she pulls the typical villainous, haha, I was never going to hold up my end of the deal anyway, then goes to throw some of her own purple magic back at Wanda. But it goes nowhere fast as we see her purple glow quickly dissipate like the final bit of liquid being squeezed out of a Windex bottle. She tries again. No dice. Not even a smidgen of purple this time. It's then revealed to us that those dodgeballs that missed Agatha and hit the walls of the Hex were actually used to cast runes. And as Agatha mentioned to Wanda in the preceding episode, in a given space, only the witch who cast the runes can use their magic. And for the briefest of moments I was like, alright, giving old Agatha a taste of her own medicine. But oh how quickly that thought faded away. How the hell does she know how to cast runes? Agatha explained their meaning to her, but she never showed how to make them in the first place. She showed her how to turn a cicada into a bird and shit. And what is up with the complete 180 on Wanda's end? Don't get me wrong, I am not actively looking for reasons to complain here, it's the opposite. I like to be optimistic and look at the brighter side of things whenever possible. But does she herself not remember everything she's been saying in this episode up to this point? She literally stood in the street and yelled at Agatha that she's not a witch, stop calling her a witch. And at the beginning of this fight of theirs, she actively tells Agatha to take her powers because she doesn't want them. Now, perhaps this was all a clever way of Wanda going about getting the advantage in this predicament, but it sure doesn't come off that way. There's no clear signs of her going mini Black Widow and using the technique she learned from her fellow Avenger off screen to throw Agatha for a loop. It's just like, nah, I'm totally embracing being a witch now, for some reason. Alright, anyway, so Wanda decides to have a full-on Phoenix Force moment and absorbs all of her magic back from Agatha. And maybe Agatha's too? Because she just rolls over and gives up after this. There definitely is a really cool moment thrown in this though, as we see Wanda's closest comic book accurate outfit materialize, and I think they did a pretty damn good job designing it. It looks like a proper, new age, contemporized version of what you would expect to see in the films nowadays, as opposed to the cheap Halloween costume we saw her in for episode 6. The two witches float back down to the ground, and Wanda's like, alright, so I'm gonna turn you back into Agnes again. But Agatha gives a warning claiming Wanda doesn't know what she's unleashed, and Wanda's like, yeah, whatever, I'll find you if I need you. And she, Vision, and their kids head on home for the very last time. At this point, the Hex is peeling away and restoring everything to its normal state. Wanda and Vision have a nice little moment with Tommy and Billy as they put them to bed, and then Wanda goes downstairs to sit in the dark by herself? What the hell? Seriously? If Vision didn't pop in here, was she just really not gonna be with him in his final moments? But there is a very heartfelt and emotional conversation between the two that does a decent job of tugging at the heartstrings, where Vision finally discovers what he, or this version of him, truly is, and it hits him so hard on the feelings that even he sheds a tear. The Hex wall washes over them until Vision dissolves, and everything goes back to normal, leaving Wanda standing in the same spot where she started this all up in the first place. Wanda walks back into town, catching intense glares from the residents, and for whatever reason decides to apologize to Monica and no one else. Monica is probably one of the only people that dealt with being inside the Hex that Wanda doesn't need to apologize to. How about the dozen or so poor saps you just casually walk by? Not even gonna utter a word or look their way? Nah, you're right, they don't deserve it. They're just regular people. They're not superheroes. She tells Monica that even though she doesn't understand these powers now, she will. And then she flies away so everyone else can clean up after her mess. Cue the credits. But of course, we aren't quite done here yet. Cut to the mid-credits scene that shows Jimmy taking charge in the aftermath of Wanda's magic meltdown, and some random agent tells Monica to go to the theater. Monica walks in to find no one, and then the random agent reveals herself to be a Skrull, stating an old friend of her mother's wants to meet up. And when Monica asks where, the Skrull lady points up, 'cause, pointing up means space. You get it. Totally setting up her role for Captain Marvel too, and I'm guessing she's now bound to pop up in the Secret Invasion series since her mother's old friend undoubtedly has to be either Nick Fury or Talos. Then off to the final after credit scene. We're taken to a peaceful, serene landscape and get a massive zoom-in shot that looks like it was filmed by a drunk drone, taking us up to a remote cabin that looks like a place where Bruce Banner would go when he's trying to not Hulk out. Wanda heads inside to make herself some tea, but the camera continues to a bedroom in the back where we see a full-on Scarlet Witch Wanda reading through the pages of the Darkhold, showing she evidently has grown the knowledge of her skills already since she can create an astral projection of herself, and the way she's reading the book gave me a lot of Doctor Strange vibes. Suddenly, she hears the voices of Billy and Tommy crying out for her help, and the series comes to a close. Well, there you have it. That's the breakdown of the series finale. Talk about being a bag of mixed emotions at the end of all this. So many things that were so well executed, and so many things that just could have been done so much better. I can't help but feel like they needed one or maybe even two more episodes because there were just a few things that didn't receive the proper spotlight they deserved. To say that I'm left with a few questions is quite an understatement. Where did White Vision fly off to? I would imagine that upon regaining his memories, he would feel the urge to go help Wanda, so what exactly did he remember that caused him to fly away on his own? My only logical deduction is that this version of Vision now remembers all of his past events, but no longer retains the heart and soul of what he once was. But I'm still holding out that they'll follow the comics, and one day down the line, Wanda will help color him back in. What was Monica's purpose here? It's unfortunate that her storyline kicked off with a solid attempt to tie her emotional distress in an empathizing way to Wanda's situation, only for her entire role to be boiled down to a justification of how she got superpowers. I'm not against the idea of her involvement leading to indirectly being an origin story, but I am against it when they drop a compelling storyline like it's no big deal and then expect us to resonate with her character. I actually cared a little bit about Monica's drive to snap Wanda out of her craziness, until it all literally went nowhere. Her getting back into the Hex and her appearance in the finale was merely an excuse to set up her role in the Captain Marvel sequel, which again, would be fine so long as she had a significant reason for her being here as well. Oh, and she was there to help the reveal of Ralph Boner. How did Wanda obtain the Darkhold? I love that she's studying it, but how the hell did she know how to find it? It's not like Agatha kept it out in the open to be taken away. Just seems like a book that wouldn't be so easy to get your hands on. This does, however, lead to a point I've been waiting to bring up. Earlier I mentioned the line from one of the zombie witches claiming Wanda's the harbinger of chaos. There's also the warning from Agatha to Wanda about not knowing what she's unleashed, and I feel both of these remarks are potentially hinting at a character we may see in the Doctor Strange sequel, or somewhere else down the line in Wanda's MCU journey. In the comics, the Darkhold was created by the elder god known as Chthon, who was banished to another dimension long ago, and there's a popular story where he possesses Wanda and uses her as a gateway to get back to this realm and take shit over. I feel decently confident that this is leading to his or Mephisto's inclusion somewhere at some point. Overall, it was a finale that I still very much enjoyed. However, after a season's worth of well-paced, character-driven moments, it was kinda tough to see it go out in the rushed, slightly illogical manner that it did. Thank goodness there were still wonderful performances all around, and that it didn't completely fall to shit. It did do a very nice job of starting off Phase 4 of the MCU, setting up some of the events that will launch us further into this interconnected universe, and I gotta say, it's definitely a bit disappointing there won't be a new episode to cover next week. But that won't stop us from discussing it all and theorizing what the future may hold. Leave those comments and thoughts down below, like this video if you enjoyed the content, and have a fantastic rest of the day.